Hello everyone, I'm Jackie Brockington. Thanks for being here with us live on News 13 for Day 5 of trial coverage. Let's bring in our team. News 13's Kelly Cook is covering this case for us in Sanford. Legal analyst Mark NeJame is here with us in our studios, and Christine Webb has been covering the online aspect of this trial. And News 13 Seminole County reporter Jeff Allen has also been closely following this fifth day of jury selection from inside the courtroom County Justice Center. And Jeff, we're learning more about how the timeline of this trial is shaping up.
Jackie, we really are, especially this morning when Judge Deborah Nelson actually sent home two groups of potential jurors at one point this morning. Now, she is sending home 23 potential jurors that have gone through initial questioning. They are to return next Tuesday. That's when attorneys will ask them more specific questions as a group in the second phase of juror questioning. Meanwhile, attorneys continue to question potential jurors individually because both sides want a pool of at least 40 who have gone through the initial phase of questioning before they can go on to that second round. Now, going into today, they still needed 17 more to pass the initial questioning to get to that group of 40. Now, the judge sent home 19 other potential jurors this morning. They are scheduled to come back Monday. Now, attorneys have not questioned them yet initially on what all they've heard about the case, what kind of news coverage they've seen, but they will be on standby if needed if they can't reach that number of 40 with the people they are questioning now. So when can we expect the next step in all this? Right now, we're expecting initial questioning to be over by possibly Monday or even Tuesday. Tuesday is when we could see the start of the second phase, but we still have this Fry hearing that has to be happen sometime before the start of testimony. The judge addressed that first thing this morning, and the Fry hearing deals with that 911 call where we hear that yelling for help in the background. Was it Trayvon Martin? Was it George Zimmerman? The defense does not want the jury to hear state audio analysis that concluded it was Trayvon Martin screaming for help. And there's one more witness to testify in that hearing, and Zimmerman's defense made it clear today they want the judge to decide that issue on whether that evidence will be heard before the next round of jury selection begins. So slowly but surely we are working our way through this process, and it looks like at this point a jury will be seated in about another week or week and a half. Of course, the trial as a whole is expected to last 2 to 4 weeks. Now, Kelly Cook now continues our live team coverage. Kelly.
Yeah, that's right, Jeff. They have sent some folks home, but they finally were able to get to questioning 3 potential jurors just this morning. 2 of them were men, 1 of them was a woman, and we also had 2 minorities who were questioned today. And for the first time and really all this week, we heard more about that stand your ground law that these potential jurors said they heard about, including this last juror, Juror G63. Take a listen.
Anything specific about the case in terms of guns, other than guns? Was there any in terms of how the shooting occurred or anything like that?
Oh, well, I mean, I know a gun was involved, and there was something to do with some kind of stand your ground law.
Okay.
I guess that's a thing in Florida that they have. Okay. But I don't know any other details about.
Any discussion, I guess, about how Mr. Martin came into contact with Mr. Zimmerman?
Oh, what do you mean? Like
in terms of how it happened, how the shooting happened?
Oh,
do you remember any details about
whatever
that?
Events might have happened? No, I don't.
Okay. All right. How about in terms of stand your ground? Do you remember anything other than there was something about stand your ground? Do you remember?
I remember there was something specific about the Florida law being weird.
Okay.
I've heard of something called the Castle Doctrine.
Okay.
But I know I thought I heard something about the Florida law being different from, like, some states have it some way, some states have another way.
News 13 legal analyst Mark NeJame joining us now. So, Mark, what do you think about this particular juror? Knows a lot, or at least have done some research about stand your ground, Castle Doctrine, but they decided not to do your stand your ground law. How could that affect this case?
Well, I think that they have abandoned the stand your ground defense, and it's purely going to go on self-defense, unless the defense has a trick up their sleeves and they're going to file some sort of motion or present it orally to the judge to have it considered simultaneously with the trial. I think that it may be a lingering issue with some jurors, and that's why they're getting into it now. But this may be the last time we hear about stand your ground. You hear about the castle doctrine, which this potential juror brought up. That's basically where you have the right to protect your home. An invader comes in, you have a right to use the necessary force to repel that invader. Stand your ground, in simple terms, is basically taking the castle doctrine and expanding it into the public places. And so, which would have been where the confrontation was between Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman. But that looks like that's not the direction that this defense is going on. They abandoned that hearing a long time ago. We've not heard anything more about them suggesting they were bringing it up. So I think this may be the last we hear about it.
Mark, well, I have you here. Before I let you go, I have to ask you this question. It seemed like they were going to wrap up questioning with this particular juror, and the jury consultant told them something, and Mark O'Mara came back and wanted to know the particular race. What was he made up of? He said he was German, Filipino, Chinese, and Spanish. Why do you think that might be important?
Well, I think it's inescapable that race is an issue in this case. It's the elephant sitting in the room that many don't want to talk about, but it's unavoidable. It has to be addressed. And George Zimmerman is, as we understand it, is a mixed race. We know that there have been issues as it relates to Trayvon Martin being African American, and suggestions that the police acted inappropriately by not arresting George Zimmerman in the beginning because he was a young black male, he being Trayvon Martin. So race is inextricably intertwined in this case, and the jury expert is well aware of that. And when you're getting into people's biases, prejudices, and such, you know, I heard almost a veiled comment from the juror when it was talking about he didn't pay much attention, didn't have much regard for people who protested. Well, the primary protesters out publicly have been those who are supporting Trayvon Martin, who've been predominantly African American. Now, with that said, is that an issue that the juror consultant is looking at when, in fact, talking about a potential juror, was one of the last two, who suggested that he had a dislike or almost not a great concern or appreciation of those who protest. So those all have to be weaved into a decision and a consideration that you're making about which juror you're going to pick.
All right, no stone to be unturned. Thank you very much, News 13 legal analyst Mark NeJame joining us right now. All right, we also want to let you know that there are just a few demonstrators who showed up here at the Seminole County Justice Center in support of Trayvon Martin. What's interesting here is that they're wearing T-shirts that says, essentially, bring on round two. They're ready to get to the second part of this jury selection process and closer to seating this 6-person jury.